Welcome to another Choose a Career segment. Today I'm here with Kat and Michael.
Yes.
And they are with, what's your firm's called?
The name of the firm is Allen and Hochul.
Okay, and y'all are a design and engineering firm. So tell us a little bit about those careers.
Sure. So as design professionals, architects and engineers, we essentially, our job is to design buildings that get built out in the environment. So we sit down, we work with clients. What we do is we develop a series of floor plans and kind of construction documents, which then get built by contractors and the buildings we use today. So all types of facilities, buildings, so schools, fire stations, municipal facilities, city halls, all those things have to go through a process of design to get content out of the client's mind onto paper and then physically built. So we're essentially a pipeline to kind of get those ideas and then make sure that these also kind of adhere to the laws and standards of where you build the building. So those are also very important things that we have to consider as well.
That's a good point. Now, most of us as consumers, we just think about the pretty.
Right.
But there's a lot that has to be done in the background to make sure that when a windstorm comes, it doesn't fall down. And because of where we have come through hundreds and hundreds of years, government entities now specify that certain codes have to be met to make sure that that job is done correctly.
That is correct.
All right, moving on to the pretty, that's the interior, and that's what people like to get excited the most about, really.
It is. It's the last thing people see, and it's usually the one that they remember the most. We do have to take into consideration a client's program. What are you doing in the space? What are you using the space for? And also the legality and the code, health, safety, welfare of the people who inhabit this space. But we also mesh all of that with how the space actually is going to make you feel. How do we mold behavior patterns by the space that you're inside of? The height of the ceiling, the proportion of the walls, different colors, where things are, where lighting is, can affect the behavior of the people and the productivity of the people inside the space.
Yeah, oddly enough, psychologically, a lot of that really ties in. Excuse me. Okay, now we're talking about several different arts and practices. So you've got an architect. A burning question that some students would have: are architects and engineers the same, or are those two different practices?
That's a great question. So they're very different in nature. So we all work together to produce a building, which is the end product, but the focus for each discipline is quite different. So like we mentioned earlier, architects design the building, they lay out the spaces, they design the exterior facade, which is kind of the artistic part that comes into it because it has to be attractive, it's got to have nice durable materials. And then we also check the code to make sure life safety, whether it has to be sprinkled, that travel egress distances are not too far. The engineers kind of fill out the rest of the building. So for structural engineers, they have to size beams and then put together the roof structure to make sure the spaces we want can be clear spanned. So that is their job, to kind of design the infrastructure. And then what we call the MEP engineers, what I call the big three, is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, right? So we had to have air conditioning for the building for it to work properly. Same thing with electrical. We got to have power, we got to have lights, we got to have plumbing so the water runs downhill and works properly. So those guys each focus on their own discipline, and then the biggest challenge is, as a team, we all have to coordinate all those trades together to make sure we as the building designers are giving those guys the proper space to run mechanical equipment, make sure we got enough coverage and clearance for code requirements for electrical equipment, make sure we got enough above ceiling space so everybody has a place to put their items and they can get installed and doesn't create any conflict.
So for anyone who's ever wondered why those blueprints cost so much, it's because there's a lot of people involved before something starts to be built.
That's very true.
I tell people all the time that it is sort of like coaching a team. You're going to have different team players. You have a quarterback, you have a fullback, you have all of these people on this team, but they all have to work collectively together to move a ball down the field.
Right.
And this is pretty much the same thing. The building is the ball, that you're moving toward a finish. You want a finished product at the end of the line. And so all of these different people have to do their job, but they have to also know what the other one's doing. And they have to play off of each other really well in order to get to the best result.
Okay, so the architect lays out the plan, the beautiful roof, whatever, the rooms that the client wants. Your engineer comes behind and says, all right, this is what you want, so I've got to make sure that everything works.
Right.
And I'll have to spec whatever's got to be behind the walls to make sure it doesn't fall.
Right.
And then after it leaves him, you have guys who come in and say, you've got to have this much electrical power, which means you have to have this many breaker boxes, whatever. If you want to heat and cool this much square footage, that map has to be done to make sure all of those systems
Correct.
get put in. And then obviously plumbing, which is not as simple as just laying pipes. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that has to go in behind that as well to make sure that that works properly. So that is a lot. And then finally, the interior designer gets to come in and try to make the finished product pretty with paint or whatever has to go into it with that.
And we usually start way back at the beginning with the architect. If we come in at the end, you're going to have a big mess. Just to be real blunt, we have to be really on the front end, because as the plumber is running, or the fire protection engineer is running their piping, or the electrical engineer is placing light fixtures, nobody wants a beautiful chandelier with a sprinkler head right in the middle of it.
Right.
Nobody wants, a ductwork coming out of a wall with $300 a yard wall covering on it.
Right.
That's
Not
just,
to mention that change orders are very expensive. So if you
Yes.
come in while the thing's already going up and say, there was a fireplace supposed to be right here,
Yeah.
that's going to be an expensive ticket to try to change.
And it's usually the smaller things, the light fixtures, the plumbing, the stuff that you don't think about until it's too late and you walk in a room and you go, why is that there?
Right.
So we have to think ahead and think through all of those things and make sure everybody's coordinated properly.
All right. Most of these positions, I'm assuming, needs a degree of some sort. So obviously, there are architecture degrees. Are those 4-year degrees typically?
Typically for architecture,
Structural?
for an accredited program is about a 5-year program. So
Okay.
most schools in the southeast, part of the SEC, like Mississippi State, Auburn, Arkansas, will have a 5-year accredited program. And then once you graduate, typically you go through an internship process. And if you got all the required credits and the hours you needed, it would take about 3 years. Most people, when they get into an internship position, I would say average is about 5 to 8 years to get all the required hours in each discipline, and then you have to sit for your architectural exams. So
Right.
There's a series of 5 tests you have to pass, and then once you do that, then you get the title of architect.
Okay. Engineer, obviously, another strenuous program, probably 4 years for an engineer degree.
Most engineer programs are 4 years. They have a very similar intern process that they have to take a couple exams and also get a required set of hours before they can sit for their final
to get a license.
licensing.
Correct.
But it's usually regulated by state. There's a certain process you have to do for continuing education credits after you become licensed, so they're very rigorous on making sure you're staying up on top of what's required to be licensed year to year.
You mentioned Mississippi State. They also have landscape architects, which is another discipline in the whole arena.
We do have those.
Okay, if you want to be an interior designer, talk about that, because I'm sure that's not one we talk about much. I'm sure there's students who are perked up, like, how would I become an interior designer?
We are actually accredited under the same board as architects and engineers are, in the same disciplines. If you use University of Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arkansas, all have those programs. They suggest a 5-year program.
Goodness gracious, that's a stretch.
As opposed to the 4-year, just because of your last year, the design portion of it is really intense. There are people that finish it sooner. They do not recommend that.
So the year 5 is almost like your internship for a lot of these programs.
You are still not. For an interior designer, you then go into an internship as well. And you have to work a set number of hours before you can even sit for your licensing. Most people, it takes 3 to 5 years before they are ready, before they can even be eligible to take the tests. And there's a series of tests the same that you have to take to be licensed. And then ongoing, you have to continue to have continuing education, you have
Right.
a certain number of hours per year that you have to meet and turn into that regulatory board for them to maintain your licensing.
And that's because with so many changes that happen in the industry, they want to make sure that y'all are up to date on those changes and the codes and all of that, because it all changes.
And there are a couple of new career paths that people are taking. They're not new, but they're fairly new, I guess. And you will see people with an interior architecture degree, and they are achieving both. It does take them longer to get through both simultaneously, but so many of the courses are crossover courses. There are universities that allow that now, so that you can essentially come out licensed in both practices.
Which just gives you a better set of skills.
It does. I do recommend it. If you can hack it for 6 years in school, I would recommend it.
Now, having said all of that, with so much schooling involved and licensing and the skill set that y'all have that is so specialized, what do these jobs typically pay? And this is going to differ from firm to firm, city to city. Down here in the Mid-South, what would a starting salary be for a structural architect or engineer?
I would say architects coming out of school, probably starting in the 50s range.
Okay.
Engineers are probably going to get paid a little bit more than that.
Right.
And then after that, it really just comes down to experience and what you end up doing. You could, a lot of people, you may stay in your discipline field and become excellent at what you do. Some people shift to doing project management, which is, like Kat mentioned earlier, that you're pretty much you're the coach of that team. You're trying to coordinate all the disciplines. You're herding cats. You're trying to get them to the finish line. That's kind of an alternative career path. Also, that you have your discipline, but there's a different pay rate for those people. Some go into more vice president roles, and that obviously has a different kind of pay scale as well. But yeah, starting out about 50 to 60 range is about normal.
Okay. And the interior designer, similar?
Probably about the same. And then upon licensing, it would be more. And I think you have the same route. If you want to go into project management, that elevates you quickly, and that pay rate is much higher. And then we have a little bit of a weird thing too, where if you specialize and you are very strong in hospitality, or you're very strong in healthcare or in higher education, you can learn so much and isolate yourself in that field and become an expert in your field that you increase your pay rate very quickly.
With these disciplines, I would assume that you could possibly become a rock star within that discipline, and people say, I want my building designed by, I want my building, whatever, the blueprints by whoever, because that guy builds beautiful buildings, and that person, that woman, designs beautiful interiors, whatever.
And then that's not even a normal. That is something totally different.
Like for us, we call that the star architect, right? So if you're so famous, people just know you by name, and they come to you, and you can almost charge fees beyond what the typical industry standard would be. But you're so famous and you're good at design that people will end up paying that, and you're usually working more in the private world. And so there are instances where you can kind of reach that. It's not, I wouldn't say it's common, but it's definitely something you can achieve.
Not a whole lot of Wrights out there these days.
Right, the famous names, Frank Lloyd Wright, Corbusier, those older ones, but there's kind of more modern ones that we know in day out that they're just well known for their design skills and definitely get rewarded for it.
Right.
And even if you're not one of the rock stars, I think you can carve out your own niche.
Sure.
And it's what you're good at. So if you have something, and I do tell people this, go with your gut. What do you like the most? If you love the intricacies of a healthcare design profession, hone in on that, because then you make yourself the expert. You become the go-to, and those other firms have to come to you. Or you can go the route of having your own business and being a consultant for all of them.
Right.
So that they all have to come to you and you're not working for a single firm.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.